Black Lives Matter protests, backed by Antifa, as they tend to be across North America.
Planned.
The community here in Innisfail is anxious. They're concerned and they're worried that, one, violence could break out, as it tends to do. In Edmonton, they smashed the window of a cop car, left graffiti everywhere. Some businesses, just on the drive-in here, we've seen that their windows are all shuttered. They have no idea how to respond to this because it's bullying at the end of the day. These folks are coming in from large cities to tell the people of Innisfail that they are racist. That's obviously not true. I've spoken with the minority groups here in Innisfail, and they've told me that they love it here. The people are the nicest people that they've ever met, and they've never once experienced racism. But that's not going to stop the radicals with Black Lives Matter to come into this community to intimidate them and try to re-educate them. So the people here in Innisfail are concerned, one, of violence, but two, the spread of the Wuhan coronavirus. They've done a pretty good job at keeping central Alberta clean from viral infections, and they're worried that this protest, full of young people who have been mingling at other protests across Alberta, are going to bring it into this community, which is largely senior. This could impact the lives of the people here in Innisfail. If an old person over the age of 85 got this infection, their chance of survival is not near as high as these selfish youth who are protesting for pretty much no reason. We're going to see if they can actually come up with a reason for why they're protesting. If they have an example of actual racism here in Innisfail. Like they say, it's just riddled with racism here in Innisfail. So we're going to actually go see if they have any examples of that happening. You're coming to speak at the protest. Why is it important to have this protest here in Innisfail?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm actually going to be speaking per se. It's just to support other councillors that have a message to get out there and support anti-racism.
Can you give me an example of racism here?
Examples? I personally have seen, like I have some close friends that they've exhibited, you know, whether they are black or of another culture, just being uncomfortable. You know, you go to some of these soccer games, you go to hockey games, you go to any public event, and there is that level of just feeling a little bit less comfortable. And I really want Innisfail to make everyone feel comfortable.
Are you from Innisfail?
I'm not. I'm from Calgary.
Okay, drove in for the party.
Absolutely.
Okay. Could you give me an example of police brutality in Innisfail?
I'm actually not going to talk to any media today. I'm sorry. That's just not something. There's lots of media and people talking to media over there. As far as my quote on anything, I'm not going to give one.
You're at a protest. What's your point here, if not to spread your message?
I'm here to show support. That's all.
To stop police brutality in the town of Innisfail with 7,000 people.
Stop police brutality in general.
Are you here to support the rally?
Yes.
Okay. Would you be able to give me any examples of?
You racist piece of shit. Get the fuck out of here.
Oh wow.
Are you? I'm not a Nazi.
Are you a Nazi?
Do you have an example of racism or police brutality here in Innisfail?
Take a picture.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if anything's happened in Innisfail, but I do know there were threats against a small little group.
Oh my goodness.
I really don't care.
It's just you that has a stick up their butt. What is Black Excellence?
Black Excellence actually is we're some of the students. We actually have this which shows that Black people excellences.
How would you respond to a shirt that said White Excellence?
White people, yeah, the white people always promote excellence. They don't need to be promoted, but we promote Black excellences.
Hi there. Are you from Innisfail?
Huh?
Are you from Innisfail?
This is Rebel Media. I wouldn't talk to him if I were you.
It's okay. Don't worry about her. Are you from Innisfail?
I'm from Canada. Doesn't matter.
But not from Innisfail. The reason I ask is I just want to know if you have any example of systemic racism in this town. Why did you choose this town specifically?
I don't want to answer that. Thank you.
No.
Yeah?
Yeah, I just told her. Like, don't talk to him.
Any example?
Matter, I know.
Yes.
We
Black ones too.
community is hiding right now. I know the natives are suffering. I know everyone is suffering in their own way.
But I just wanted an example of race of.
It doesn't have to be equal. It doesn't have to be equal. It doesn't have to be equal.
It doesn't have to be equal.
It doesn't have to be equal.
Oh, hurt.
It doesn't have to be equal. We're all human. You know?
Also affects working Albertans that may not agree with us. So our presence here is a sign to other people that are working in the same trenches as us, the same intersections.
This rally in particular is about anti-police brutality, and we're wondering if there's an example of police brutality against black people specifically, or any visible minority?
I haven't seen any brutality from police in Innisfail. I actually know that most of the police in Innisfail are very personable.
Could you give me an example of police brutality or racism here in Innisfail?
Well, I just moved to Innisfail, so I haven't
From where?
around here. From Red Deer.
Okay, so if you haven't seen any sort of police brutality, why are you at a anti-police brutality rally?
Well, I've seen or experienced myself some situations with police that have made me rather uncomfortable.
Your poster says it's a white people problem, racism. Do you think that that statement might be racist itself?
I don't have any comment for you.
You don't have any examples of police
Exactly, they
brutality. Do you have
are
any
all
examples of police
writing.
brutality against black people in Canada at all?
I'm not gonna make any more comments to you guys. I'm sorry. There are people over there that would love to make a comment. I'm not one of them.
Sounds like you don't really have any examples of
I
police
know, right?
brutality. You just kind of want to be here and hold a sign.
Talk to
You
me.
get-
They're bullying the small
Can't
town
see.
people
Okay,
into
can't see.
what their ideation is
Oh.
and how they should feel about this issue. And most of the people, particularly in Innisfail, are seniors. There's a lot of senior population
Probably
here.
making sure your
They should be
dog doesn't
listening
get
to
him
them.
again.
Coming here to tell me I'm racist.
I came to the protest because
I
I.
saw a poster that said people here that live here are racist.
Oh, you seen the poster? Not this one.
No, I'm
No, this one doesn't say anything about racism. Right? This has nothing to say about racism. What? Oh, you cringe your face when you see that. Why?
Well, I've just seen that symbol in other places that makes me a little uncomfortable because it's a very violent, aggressive.
Why are you here to come witness this?
Why am I here to come witness this? Because this is a small town and this kind of thing is not really something we like to see. A gathering of people
You're
from...
really not giving me information. I'm telling you what I'm here for.
She's referring to the pandemic that is risking the lives of large.
Probably the biggest one in Alberta.
Sorry. Yes.
So why are you here?
For myself, I'm here to represent myself as a black person.
To represent to the locals. What is your message to Innisfail?
To bring up these things, talk to each other, and kill the racism.
Where's the racism? Can you give me a specific example of racism?
Racism is when right now, when you've seen this, what does this mean to you?
Why am I a racist?
What is this?
Because that I've seen that symbol used in other places that initiate.
So they
Up
can't
to this
even
point,
allow
I
people
was
to actually
over
talk.
on
We
the-
came here to
on the
talk to
side
people,
there,
but
thinking this is great, this is peaceful, no problem, and I'm all for peaceful rallies, protests. I've done it all across the country. A fellow comes up on a motorcycle, and all of a sudden they are swarmed and surrounded and intimidated. This is what Innisfail doesn't need. We don't need intimidation, and we don't need the movement of Black Lives Matter that are intimidating in our town. I'm sorry. And what happened to the coronavirus? Do you see anybody social distancing here? All of a sudden that's gone? I've got businesses over here that have moved their vehicles because they're worried. And are they worried because there's been peaceful protests? No, they're worried because they're intimidated. They have an intimidation factor, and that's wrong.
Why would you come to Innisfail, which is like a sweet, polite town of elderly people that are afraid of COVID, and you inundate them? I mean, I feel so sad. The people of Innisfail are wonderful.
I mean, I've lived in this town for 40 years, and if anything, I've seen nothing but acceptance for colored people, and in fact, usually an interest in them, because there isn't a lot.
I grew up here, and I experienced a ton of prejudice growing up here.
Sorry, are you, as a white person, you experience prejudice?
As a minority, I experienced a lot of prejudice.
You're not a visible minority. Could you elaborate?
I'm gay.
Okay. And this is a gay rally or a Black Lives Matter rally?
It's a rights rally.
Okay. All right. So could you give me examples of that prejudice? Okay.
Yeah, well, racism exists, there's no doubt about that. But to say that it's systematic, institutional, there actually has to be laws against people for the color of their culture that says you can't get ahead. And in fact, I see in North American democratic countries, we make sure that people actually have extra rights so that they aren't being left behind. Well, I think everybody has the right to their free speech, and I think everybody's allowed to exercise it perfectly fine. But you got him holding a sign that says silence is violence, and a lot of the time, everybody knows by now, if you have a contrary opinion to the left wing, then you're silenced. You're removed from Facebook. You try to report anybody for their violence on the other side, and nothing gets done about that. There's a clear worldwide agenda going on here that involves media and governments on left-wing governments all around the world. Every UN country, it's all the exact same politics that are going on in the world right now. It's hard to even say what's going on, but things certainly aren't getting better, that's for sure. I don't think that tribalizing people helps. The more groups that have been coming out over the last few years, the more problems there's been. I think that there's more problems now than there had been since the last 15 years before or lately. And why is it Black Lives Matter only comes out during election season?
That was a really good question.
About them for 4 years, and now they're back out in the public again because it's an election coming up again. This is a political agenda. If you go to Black Lives Matter... No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the organization itself seems to have political motives behind it. No, I don't.
Could you give me an example of racism here in Innisfail?
I'm not from Innisfail. I'm from Alder Flat. I grew up with redneck racism.
Why are you even
so
there?
yeah,
Then?
it does exist.
You're not a racist.
No, I do not. To get that thing out of my face. Without being intrusive.
If you just had an example of racism, though, that'd be great.
Back up. Stop walking closer to her, right?
I could give you 1,000 examples of racism that I've witnessed.
I just want one example, please, please.
That.
We just want to tell the world how racist it is here in small town Alberta.
Racist for you to feel the need to come here and say you're not racist. That's racist. I'm sorry.
No, you're white, so you're supposed to be silent.
Ah, I'm dizzy. Trying to look around and sign with the cameraman.
I don't know if you heard, was that recording there?
Oh no.
I don't know if you heard that. She said that everything here was literally created by slaves, which is obviously not true. Canada abolished slavery over 200 years ago, I think it was now. And this town isn't even 100 years old. I don't think. Alberta, at least, is about 115 years old, and it was created well after slavery was abolished in Canada. So they clearly have no idea what they're talking about. The people who built this country are the elderly people in the seniors' home on the south end of town.
100%.
They built this country. Their parents built this country. They were the pioneers, the homesteaders, built this country. Slavery did not build Alberta.
No, it absolutely did not. And that's probably one of the biggest sources of aggravation. I was in the store here for a few minutes before all this gong show started, and the people here are angry that they're being told by people from out of town that they're racist, that they don't understand.
No Frills let this happen on their property. Do you feel they betrayed their own town? It's not these folks that are going to be shopping at that No Frills tomorrow.
100%. And yeah, I think even the staff, and I won't speak for them, but I do feel, and some of the customers that were in there, and I engaged with them a little bit, they're angry. They're angry that these people are here, that they're intending to educate us and tell us these things. Yeah, and that was the term that I saw in a poster that was telling them all to come to this.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you chatting with me. It was a very delightful conversation, unlike most that I've had. So
I appreciate Rebel. You guys are truthful and authentic, and that's a breath of fresh air.
Should I not have the freedom to hear and see reporting that is different from mainstream media? Let them do their job.
Hey, always cut your back, brother. Always.
would you be able to tell me what is important about this? Why is it important that we rally here in Innisfail?
I think these rallies serve kind of two different functions. I think part of it is in support of the peaceful protesters in the States being met with military force by their current leader. And
so
I also think it's kind of just a big,
thing.
Flip off to racism kind of a thing. And I think it's about recognizing Canada has a lot of its own problems, with reconciliation now being part of the curriculum since 2007. It's a really important step, just acknowledging what has happened. But I also see a lot of people denying that there is anything going on. And I'm not saying that things are as bad as they were in the 20s by any means, but I think you're just frankly incorrect if you think that there aren't racial problems here in Alberta, even in Innisfail.
Are you from Innisfail?
No, I'm from Lacombe, actually. Yeah.
Could you give me an example of police brutality here in Innisfail?
I can't because I'm not from Innisfail.
There's assholes everywhere. And when you grow up in life, you're always going to meet people that don't agree with you, that are rude or ignorant, and that's life. Canada, I'm so sad because we are not a racist nation. There are racist people in Canada, but we are not a racist nation.
Would I be able to ask you a quick question about just your speech there? Could you give me an example of systemic racism here in Innisfail? You just came to give a speech. Can you give an example of it?
I'm absolutely not giving. Thank you.
You don't understand consent, eh? Consent is being in public and
deciding I don't have to do anything you asked.
Didn't tell you you had to. I was just asking you questions.
Yes, and I said no.
Could you give me an example of actual racism here in Innisfail? Nothing? Been looking for 23 years, haven't?
I've lived here for almost 22 years now, and I haven't seen any racism. I've seen shitty people.
Holy mackerel, white people have never seen racism.
No, but so like, I've lived in Innisfail my entire life, or like just west of town, and then recently I've lived in town now. I've never seen racism. I probably know 50 Syrian refugees about. Well, they're from Syria, then they went to Lebanon, now they're in Canada. But they've been here for about 2 years, some longer, some a bit shorter. One guy worked at Tim Hortons for about a year and a half, and I've asked him, like, have you ever experienced racism? He's like, no. He's like, I've never... Yeah, his first name's Mohammed, and he's never experienced racism. He's like, I've met shitty people, but like every service job you have shitty people. He's like, there's shitty white people, there's shitty black people.
What do you think the reason is for these radicals to come into this community to re-educate you? Why did they pick Innisfail?
Well, Brittany Beauvais, she made a post on Facebook about doing the protest, and then they're like, I forget exactly what happened. Like it got denied or something. Yeah, there's a lot of backlash. She canceled. Yeah, and then it got trending on Twitter, and now everyone's here, and I'm just like wondering, like there's quite an old population in Innisfail here. Like there's an old folks home on the south end of town. Like why are we exposing everyone to COVID right now? Like it is a problem.
You think it's selfish?
Maybe there's an argument for it to be selfish and unselfish. I think there's a lot of police brutality. There's seen a lot of.
Here in Innisfail, though, have you seen an example of police brutality? Honestly,
I have not. No, I'm not counter-protesting. I'm just here because yeah.
This is their town.
Doesn't matter. Even if it's their town, I'm allowed to come here anytime. Yeah, you don't have to hear it.
Could you explain what brought you here? My name's Kian.
With whom? I'm from Calgary too. Yeah. So you're telling me I'm not allowed to come here because he lives here? Yeah, you just said it like 2 minutes ago. You are saying
why did you pick Innisfail?
Because we can. Yeah.
You came here to re-educate these people specifically.
Canada, anywhere I want to.
You're educating other people to assert that Black Lives Matter. Like
that's not the message here. That's not what people are saying here. They're saying that people here in Innisfail are specifically racist.
Nothing. I haven't heard any.
Are you from Innisfail?
I'm not giving you any information.
I'm sure you're not from Innisfail, or else you wouldn't be protesting here.
Are you sure?